Tau Football Week. We're headed off to Minnesota for all things Super Bowl 52. And, of course, Ray Lewis headed to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. I'm legitimately thinking about detouring into Cleveland and Pittsburgh for some baseball on that big weekend in August. And it's always a good time to talk baseball with this guy. He is a son of Baltimore, at least West Baltimore, and Hoco, as they say, in Howard County, in Ellicott City. He is now the longtime voice of the Tampa Bay Rays. He's my friend where it is, he's the smart guy in this relationship. I'm the guy up here where it's 12 degrees and my nose is running and we're in the middle of winter. And Andy Freed sits somewhere within miles of white sand and blue water. Be honest, Andy, what's the temperature there right now as we speak?
Well, it is in the 40s, believe it or not, down here in Florida. So it is not quite as balmy as it could be. But I tell you, if I'm the smart one in this relationship, then we're in trouble. But,
well, I don't know, man. You're down there soaking up the sun here, waiting for baseball. Look, look, you and I have been at this a long time. Give everybody your background real quick. I always, with all the Baltimore guys that are my friends, I mean, I got friends all over Florida. Sam Cavaras came on last week. But, just to sort of paint the picture of who you are a lifer Oriole guy who got caught up in this web like Rick Vaughn down there of being involved in a different franchise. But you got a lot of soul up here, right?
Oh, I love when you say son of Baltimore. Because that's the way I feel. I feel that Maryland is my home and always will be. But at the same time, my family and I have set up shop here in Florida. We love it, and I don't see me leaving anytime soon. And part of it is because of the winter. To be perfectly honest with you, this is as cold as it gets down here. I don't miss the freezing cold up north at all. But in terms of loyalty to the Orioles, I go back to '79. Like so many people in our area. They fell in love with the Orioles during that magic summer of 1979, and from '79 to the mid '80s, it was just such an enjoyable ride. And I feel jealous that I didn't find the Orioles earlier because I would have loved now to go back and look at some of those Weaver machines in the mid '70s and when Palmer was at his height and on and on. But to me, I can't get enough of the Orioles from the 70s and early 80s. I mean, I'm on YouTube all the time. I'm constantly looking. Anything that has Chuck Thompson in it, to me, is like gold. And I'm constantly mining for gold. And any of those little videos and stuff that come up, I watch them all winter long because that is just hallowed ground for me. Orioles baseball, late 70s to mid 80s.
Well, and so for me, my journey began really 72, 73, 74. I'm a little older. I was born in 68, so I turned 50 in October this year. I don't think the Orioles will be playing in October this year, but, I took a call a couple weeks ago. Ron Snyder's doing a piece on the 88, 89 Orioles and sort of that shift of being awful to why not and Devereaux and all that stuff. And, I know that history like the back of my hand. And then you get to this point where the crossroads of franchises, and look, it is very star-crossed where you are because anytime I talk about the Rays, it's like they have a whole separate set of sort of relegation rules in regard to how much money they spend. It's to me, a very, very uncomfortable truth about baseball and it not being a level playing field as we go into this deep dive now of the Yankees having all the riches again in our division. And I'm sure you and I will talk 3 or 4 times this year, and both of our teams are going to struggle. Both of your teams. I mean, I'm not a Rays guy, but I mean, you call Rays baseball and watch all this unfold, but we're now watching this balance of power shift again. And for people like you and I that have been around it this long, I remember when that happened in the late 70s before you kind of came onto the train. One of the beauties of that 79 and the 83 team is the Orioles had been rocked of all their players, of Baylor, of Gritch, of DeCinces, all those, Reggie Jackson who came through and left. We lost all those players to free agency because the Orioles didn't have the money to retain those players. You'd like to think that a generation later it wouldn't be that way, but you've had your own situation there with Longoria, and obviously this Machado thing here is not going to sit well.
No, I mean, well, in terms of first, it's very hard to compare baseball from that era to this era, just economically. I mean, the dollars make such a difference. And look, none of us got into sports from a fan standpoint or even from a working standpoint to look at the business side of it. That's not really where the fun is. But if you're gonna look at it seriously, you have to. I mean, it makes an enormous difference. I mean, the difference in dollars between the teams back then when you're talking wasn't that much. So when you had great executives like the Orioles did, whether it be Harry Dalton and Frank Cashin and Hank Peters and on and on and on, and solid ownership and Jerry Hoffberger, then the smarts won the day, and the farm system won the day, and the scouts won the day. Now that's, I think, a little less than that. Now, I will say this for the Rays. I think the Rays were one of the real groundbreaking teams on how to win with less money. And and that was proven in 08 to 13 when this
smart
team still
people
had relatively
matter,
low,
right? I mean, smart executives and smart managers and young cheap talent. When you have that, you win, right? I mean, the Astros are a great example of that, right?
Yeah,
now.
the difference though is that everybody wanted to start to do that, which makes perfect business sense and perfect baseball sense. But then you've got teams like the Yankees that are able to do it, and combine the fact, excuse me, that they've got so much money to deal with on top of it. The Rays are almost into transition time again, where they're looking for what is the great new frontier, what can separate us, what can be the difference maker to get us to the forefront again to win while we're never going to have those massive payrolls. And, you know, I mean, I think the Yankees run into a bit of luck also. I mean, and to their credit, they never thought Aaron Judge was going to be this. I mean, nobody in the world thought that Aaron Judge was going to be a 50-homer guy, you know, this early in his career. And look, his career could still take many turns. This is not a complete player whatsoever, and he's going to strike out 200 times. But look, the Yankees have done a very good job of scouting and development, apparently, and they also have the money where they can make trades for guys and be able to pay them and then keep who they want and still sign free agents.
But when you have the most money, you get all that. You can buy the best scouts, you can buy the best coaches, you can buy the best equipment, you can buy the best players, you can invest more money.
I'll give you a great example, Nestor. I'll give you a great example. Early in the 2012 season, our first series was against the Yankees. This is in the height of the Joe Madden era, when the Rays were really ahead of the curve with regard to defensive shifting, in regard to utilizing and integrating sabermetrics, and on and on and on. And the Rays
had young pitching and all that stuff.
And
right?
They had great pitching. Mm-hmm. That opening series, the Rays swept the Yankees to start the year, 3 in a row. And it just seemed like every single ball that the Yankees hit that weekend or that week, a Rays player was standing there. And I can remember that several of the Yankees, whether I forgot if it was Cashman, I know Kevin Long, who was the hitting coach then, were interviewed about it, and they said, well, the Rays just got lucky from where their guys were positioned. We hit the ball hard, but it went right to their players. And we'd never, and the intimation was, and someone was quoted as saying it, we'll never do shifting like that because it ultimately doesn't work. Well, what happens? Finally, they are on track with the fact that stuff like that does work. And now you see the Yankees fully on board with like that, and hardly any team doesn't shift like that. So the Rays were at the forefront, but then the other teams figured it out, and in a way it's a tribute to what the Rays were able to do, but at the same time it puts us behind the 8 ball and trying to figure out what is the next new frontier.
That's like football. Everybody plays the Tampa 2 now, right? I mean,
sure.
right? I mean,
right.
That's where it is. So for transitional, purposes here, and where your franchise is, where the Orioles are, and obviously the Orioles are saddled with a Chris Davis talking about shifting. No one understands that more than Chris Davis at this point. But the Evan Longoria deal and where the Orioles stand, not just with Machado, but as I'm sure you know, you're one of the more astute baseball people I come in contact with. Duquette and Showalter married through the end of this year. No pitching here right now. No 3, no 4, no 5. Machado dangling. Adam Jones dangling. Brad Brock dangling. And now Zach Britton in some sort of weird, as I said, black cat, as Mr. Angelos used to say behind Camden Yards. The Zach Britton injury happens when they're trying to, go deal him off. They've never been good at these transitions, and Peter has never been good at pulling the trigger on stuff. But this, right now, especially with the Yankees and the Red Sox loading up so much that winning divisions and going to American League Championship Series doesn't even buy your manager job security in Boston and New York anymore. And we're going into this dark period of what happens after Buck, what happens after Machado, what happens after Adam Jones, and there's no movement toward a plan here. I mean, this is a very, very strange, dark time, and I know you've chronicled it all during your adulthood with Mr. Angelos, who hasn't won a championship either, but this is a very, very disconcerting period of time right now for the franchise.
And the Orioles and the Rays are in similar situations because several things. One, you can lament the fact, and we lament it here, and the Orioles can too there, that when you had your window, that you didn't get it done.
Right.
And for some reason, the Orioles could not get past the League Championship Series round when they ran into the hot Royals, and they ran into this hot team and that hot team. Same with us. We ran into the Red Sox one year, we ran into the Rangers 2 different years, and we got to the series once, but we never could win it. When that window closes, you better be set up in several ways. You better have a farm system that has been able to churn through and produce talent for that next wave. The question remains whether the Rays or the Orioles, for that matter, have that next wave. And 2, you better make sure that you get rid of your guys. You have to decide, can you win, can you not? And right now, I think that partly what the Rays are involved in is that they're trying to figure out, can we really win now or not? The Red Sox and Yankees seem to be so far ahead that you better get rid of your guys while they still have value. And I think that's what the Rays did with Evan Longoria. This was not at all a salary dump. I mean, money always plays a role in it, as you know. It has to. But at the same time, this was much less of a salary dump. This is not like what the Marlins have done. This is much more about procuring talent. And the Rays have had decent talent the last couple of years, but we're not going to be better this year than we were last year. We're not going to have more talent this year or probably next year than we did last year. And we haven't finished above 500 since 2013. So while Evan Longoria has value, you better trade him as much as it hurts. And it stinks, and it's horrendous, and I tend to think the Orioles should probably do the same thing with Machado.
We don't do that around here, though.
But if you get something back, and that's why your trades have to be so smart, and you can't miss, that if you get something back, then ultimately the fans will come back when you start winning again.
Well, it makes sense to you. It makes sense to me. He is Andy Freed, longtime Oriole fan from Ellicott City, but even longer time now, voice of the Tampa Rays, along with Dave Wills. 2005, you took that assignment, correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Well, 2005,
this will be our 14th year.
You have seen it all. Like, you came in when it was sort of built up a little bit, and now trying to sort of resurrect it and figure it out. What is the great hope for a Rays fan? And I saw, a guy like Longoria leaves behind this beautiful message after this era, that sort of came and went, and they didn't build the new stadium during that era the way, let's say, San Diego got it done and some other places where when you're winning, the civic thing can move it to the next level. Instead, you're still in a stadium that was challenging when they moved into the stadium 25 years ago. And where are we progress-wise there? Because I would think this is going to be even more difficult. Camden Yards now 25 years old up here as well, and we're talking about that with the football team. We've got empty seats for the first time in a generation here for Ravens games.
No kidding.
You come into Orioles games, and you know that it can be lonely. And if the Orioles are going to be a team that's going to win 74 games this year, whatever it's going to be, I would think that Oriole Park could look as lonely as the Trop looks sometimes when it gets lonely down there.
Well, I mean, when you win, they do tend to come back, and as we've seen, and you hope that the worst thing is apathy. That's what was scary for me with the Orioles for years, seeing the early 2000s and into the mid 2000s, that it seemed from the outside that people didn't care anymore. But what happened? They put together a franchise, and suddenly they're packing Camden Yards again. And look, Baltimore's a wonderful market, and the Orioles should always do well there. Ultimately, in terms of us, I mean, when the new ownership came in 2005, I don't think they ever thought we'd still be playing at Tropicana Field for the 2018 season. I think they thought that this thing was going to resolve itself, maybe not quickly, but certainly by 14 years into the new ownership. But,
I mean, how close has it ever come? Like, I remember reading some stuff and seeing the pretty little park that sort of looked like Al Lang, but a bigger version downtown. And, who's going to claim the franchise there?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it is still moving along, and it's actually very quietly moving along in a very positive direction. You don't hear that outside of this market. And even I think within our market, people are very confused with exactly what's happening. People are still wondering about Stu Sternberg's loyalty to the area, which I can't, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. If the guy wanted to move the franchise out of here, he could have done it at any point in time over the last decade. But he doesn't. He wants to pass this franchise along to his kids. He has 4 kids, and he ultimately has very publicly said, I don't want to move it out of Tampa Bay. We want this to work within Tampa Bay. And right now they're at the point where they're in kind of the stadium site location phase. But as you know, what it ultimately comes down to is once that site is determined, and down here it's between St. Petersburg and Tampa, 2 rivaling cities, which for the life of me I can't figure out why they can't get along.
People hate driving across those bridges, don't they? I mean, those causeways might as well be like the Berlin Wall or something, right?
It might as well. Every time we go to Minnesota and I see Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I think they made it work. And we go to Seattle, I think of Seattle-Tacoma, they made it work. And we go to all these other cities where you have somewhat rival cities. There's always one that's a little bigger, and there's always one that has a bit of a chip on its shoulder. And that's what it seems to be down here. And look, for the betterment of the entire, that's why they're called the Tampa Bay Rays. That's why they're not called the Tampa Rays or the St. Petersburg Rays. Tampa Bay is a very large, spread out area. And for it to work, it's got to be in a location where people can get to without good public transportation, because they don't have that down here at all, and it's very much in need of it. And ultimately, when they find the right place, and then to me the scary part is figuring out how they're going to pay for it, and that always comes down to politicians and elections. So it's moving. It's just moving very, very slowly for fans, because I think everybody wants this to be a done issue already.
Andy Freed joining us here from Tampa, where it's only in the 40s at the, wait 48 hours. It'll be in the 70s there, and they'll be hanging out. We'll be doing spring training down in Sarasota. Pitchers and catchers reporting. Around here for the Orioles, it's almost singular, like pitcher and catchers report. It really has been the weirdest, slowest market, and you hear collusion, and I think to myself, well, I read Lords of the Realm 25 years ago. How in the world could they possibly collude with Andy MacPhail involved in? And I don't. And I understand they're all trying to save money. They're all trying to go young. The international market is there. The draft pool, all of that stuff. And no one is quick to want to give another Chris Davis kind of deal out. But this has been the slowest. I mean, it's not even a hot stove. It's more like a frosty stove in this offseason. Maybe we're used to that in Tampa, maybe in Baltimore to some degree. But it has certainly been, I would think, for the agents and the players themselves, as we get into the end of January now with so many players without a home, it's been a unique offseason, I would say.
And not only just players without a home, but a lot of marquee name players without a home. And it's becoming a game of chicken right now. And spring training is a month away. I mean, we are less than 30 days away from the opening of camps. There's a lot of guys without teams. I wonder what that means. I mean, I think it might help a team like the Rays, because they might be able to swoop in and get talent that is anxious to get signed. I mean, there's a lot of really good players out there right now, and usually the Rays wait till the end, but who knows? Maybe it'll give us a bit of a help. At the same time, though, who is more desperate? Is the player and the agent desperate, or is the team desperate to secure talent that is still out there for the taking? I mean, camps are about to open. Is there going to be like a group of free agents that train together? I mean,
the Homestead Homies.
Because they don't have teams. I'm curious.
Well,
I think it's going to be interesting.
I think for a lot of these free agents and their agents, it really sort of redefines what the off-season is like, right? I don't think anyone could have written this script in the off-season, because this has been unlike any other. It is weird, because I guess the Orioles are going to sign a pitcher or two that we don't know about yet. Usually by now we know about it. Usually you want to roll it out for their winter carnivals and sell tickets and have autographs and get people all riled up about buying tickets. It doesn't feel like any organization outside of the Angels and the Yankees really have behaved in that fashion.
Well, a lot of these teams have already had their conventions. I mean,
right, sure.
We're kind of getting to, our Fan Fest is February 10th. So that's just a couple of weeks away, and who's on our team? I mean, we have a bunch of young guys right now, but there's plenty of questions, and that's just not us. I mean, the Rays are kind of at the bottom of that list. There's many teams that the Red Sox are still trying to figure out, are they in the market for J.D. Martinez? And it's a very interesting. I don't know. To me, the slowness of it is compelling. It's like watching a poker match. And at the same time, I mean, these teams all have the same information now. I mean, I don't think there's any great breakthrough information. I mean, it's baseball front offices versus baseball front offices. It's which team's computers crunch out which numbers, and they all ultimately come out to the same answers. So which team is going to decide to allocate those funds for free agents, and which teams are going to decide that we have a chance to win, and which might tank it a little bit. And I tell you what, the last three world champions tanked it for a long time, and they've had parades and they've had World Series rings. Astros, Cubs, and Royals certainly make you think that. tearing it down could be the way to go. And if so, you're not going to sign high-priced free agents.
And then it really comes down to who are your baseball people? Who's as Bill Parcells would say, who's picking the ingredients at the supermarket? And, that was something that was done so well in Tampa. I think it was done well here during the McPhail era, and I think that that has sort of been borne out, that the Adam Jones-Tillman deal turned out to be something that, from your childhood and my childhood, the Yankees-Orioles deal of Tippy Martinez and Rick Dempsey, and that deal changed things. The Machado dealing him to the Yankees and the Red Sox, boy, they were very, very strange, old school. We don't want to deal within the division and all that. Meanwhile, the Rays found a nice home for Longoria, right? Like, that's a good landing spot for him. He'll do well with the Giants, I think.
I think so. I mean, I don't think that Evan is necessarily a number 3 or 4 hitter anymore. I mean, 2 years ago he was with 36 home runs, but last year he really didn't have a great year. 3 years ago he really didn't have a great year. But the Giants aren't a great hitting team. But he's an excellent defensive third baseman. He was surprised he won the Gold Glove. I was too. I actually thought he took a little bit of a step back defensively, yet he won the Gold Glove. Evan is a seasoned veteran player. He's not a loud rah-rah guy. He's going back to California. He's from Southern California. He'll be playing with a good, solid franchise in the Giants, and it's a very good landing spot for him. And I think, in fact, I know the way it was handled was really well done. The Rays, and look, it was a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of decision-making to make this deal, but the Rays kind of did it with Evan Longoria. They worked together on this deal, and you don't always hear that. There was really good communication from the Rays to Evan and back. Evan understood what was going on. He's 32. I think he sees that there's a bit of a rebuild going on. So what's he going to be, 35 by the time this team is good again, and maybe at the earliest? So, it was very well done. I think, I don't know if he's still going to live around here or not. He has homes at a couple different places. But to me, Evan, in my mind, will always be the greatest Ray because, he could have at numerous times during his career gone somewhere else to make a heck of a lot more money in free agency. He signed not one but 2 different long-term deals at below market money to stay with the Rays, and without him, this franchise probably never wins a division. So I will always feel very, very warmly towards Evan Longoria. I think he's a terrific guy, and as a franchise player, I wish him nothing but the best, but at the same time, I hope that Christian Arroyo and the 4 guys that the Rays got back can help us win again. People that don't like the deal, my answer is, well, did you like not winning the last 4 years? That's really what it's come down to. So you get his salary off the books, you get talent back, and you hope that some of our young guys coming along can make this team good again.
Well, you give all these plaudits and platitudes to Evan Longoria. Meanwhile, we sort of realize with Machado there's 600 at-bats left, tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. And I know that the other Florida franchise over to Miami has certainly sort of drifted even further into the abyss to some degree. But he would be the dangling prize, and he would be the guy that they would pull that Stanton money back with the prospects they picked up and try to go out into the market, and Mr. Miami on the back of his jersey on Fun Weekend and all that stuff. That's another fascinating case study to what does happen to the star players, and where is Bryce Harper going to land, right?
Well, I think it comes down to, can you win? The Nationals look like a team that could still win. I could see them going to free agency with him. The Orioles, on the other hand, I think in a very tough spot, but, this is what I think of, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong. Maybe I am. When I think back to those Orioles teams we were talking about earlier, 79 to 83, and they put that team together, and they were great, and they finally, after cutting so close in 80, 82, finally won it in 83, and then everybody got old at the same time, and they never got anything back for that talent. They all kind of retired. Bunbury and Singleton got old at the same time. Lowenstein ran out of gas. Renicky ends up on the Yankees, on and on and on.
They got Hoyles back in the Fred Lynn deal, I think, or
right.
You know what I mean? Like they got Boddicker, that deal, so they got the Brady Anderson and the
Boddicker deal was actually one of the good ones because they got Brady Anderson back. But outside of that, they didn't get anything back for the team. And when that happens, and your farm system dries up, you're stuck getting your Fred Lynns and Lee Lacy's and Don Ossie's and on. And then when that doesn't, and Rick Burleson's, and then when that doesn't work, you're screwed for the next decade. And that's what happened to the Orioles. So I think you better get something back from Machado while you can still build something, because they're probably not going to win this year. Now, the thing is, the team that's trading for him has to think that they're going to win now because they're only going to get 1 year. Adam Machado. So I don't see the Orioles trading them to the Red Sox or the Yankees, but I could certainly see them trading them to many other teams. But I think you got to be bold and decisive, and kind of like what the Rays did with Longoria, and the Orioles sitting around. That might be tough. If then again, maybe come July they deal them and get a boatload back. But they're pretty smart guys in Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter. But ultimately, it does come. One thing I've learned in baseball. Ultimately, it comes down to the ownership, and the ownership has to pull the trigger on these things.
Well, I'm glad you've learned that. We've all learned that here in Baltimore at this point. Andy Freed is a longtime Baltimorean who has been displaced and misplaced and is loving his life down there in Tampa, calling Tampa Rays games. The pride of Ellicott City. Towson's got a pretty good basketball program. I know you're a Tiger alum, too, so I know you're staying in touch with all that. Well, hey, enjoy all things preseason, spring training, grapefruit, all the fun you're going to have down there at the Stone Crab Stadium. That's where you guys, Port St. Lucie, right?
We sure do. Charlotte Sports Bar. Are you making a spring training trip this year?
Maybe. So the NFL owners meetings are in Orlando, and here's the weird part. It's in Orlando in March, and you're like, oh, that's great, because a lot of times I go down there. I've caught games in Kissimmee. I've caught Braves games down there in the Disney complex and all that stuff. I've been down for Sarasota, the whole deal. My mother-in-law lives down down by Port Charlotte, where you guys do your thing. And I still haven't been to JetBlue Park. I haven't been to the Red Sox, mainly because it's so hard to access and was hard to get tickets for years down there. But the owners' meetings coincide at the end of March. Baseball starts March 28th or 29th.
Yeah.
So literally the owners' meetings are going on when opening day is happening. The Orioles open on a Thursday in March.
So do we. Yep, March 29th.
Yeah, so, if I don't get down there, in February, I'm not going to spring training games at this point, I guess.
That's right. Yep. Well, I'll tell you, where the Orioles played at Smith and where the Rays played, Charlotte Sports Park, are wonderful places. And every time it's 15 degrees in Baltimore, just think that it's going to be wonderful here in about a month, and we'll be watching baseball.
My favorite memories of the Orioles of covering the teams were the weird 92, 93, 94. They played at Al Lang, and they practiced at Huggins Stengel, and Stengel like Casey Stengel. And it's the place where the Yankees of the 20s played and practiced, and the place... Dundalk Community College had far better facilities than that place had, even in 1993. And I remember it so vividly in Al Lang, and the players actually put their uniforms on and had to get on the bus. That's how crazy the Orioles were in the early 90s when Angelos first took over, and they were broke.
So what's really cool, too, is you're talking about Huggins Stengel Field. Is that it is still there now, and it's really off the beaten path. But for those that like baseball history, to go over to that field, that is where Gehrig and Ruth and the 27 Yankees and all those guys did train, and it's still there. And if you look at pictures of black and white pictures, those guys training, those legends 100 years ago, it pretty much looks the same right now. So for those that are in baseball history, over in St. Petersburg, it's a really interesting place just to drive by.
Look for the water towers.
That's it, and it's still there.
See, there you go. That's what I say. When I think of St. Pete, I spent a couple of really fun weeks there in 1992, 93, 94, because it was weird. And, and then you would go out to, Baseball City in Kansas City, and, they had it all together, and they had all this stuff built up around it. And meanwhile, the Orioles are, practicing in a farm lodge with bad plumbing. It's hilarious.
It all works. Ed Smith Stadium's pretty darn cool, though, now. They really have one of the best ones.
Hey, man, take care of yourself. We shall see you soon.
Sounds good, and best to your better half also.
Soak up the sun, as Sheryl Crow once said. There he goes. Right. Andy Freed, pride of Ellicott City and Towson University, calling Tampa Rays games. He's probably going to watch a lot of bad baseball this year, and I think we're going to be subjected to a lot of bad baseball around here, but at least I can keep my great sense of humor about it all. The Buy at Toyota.com audio vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device to download, listen when you want, where you want, how you want, to all the things we're going to be talking about around here. AFC, NFC Championship game, Super Bowl. We're going to be in Minnesota in 2 weeks, broadcasting live from the Mall of America out there. Luke is going with us, and we'll have our usual butt-kicking performance out on Facebook Live and YouTube and all that good stuff. If you need me, nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Also putting together a bus trip and a tour, a 3-hour tour. We're going out to Ohio. Maybe play some Chrissy Hind on the way out to Akron. Maybe to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well. I'm putting together a weekend for the Ray Lewis thing that's going to be a little baseball, a little rock and roll, a little football. I hope you come along. Throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. It is the weekend of August 2nd. We expect Ray Lewis to be going into the Hall of Fame. We'll be broadcasting more about that and taking you along, hopefully on a really cool trip. I'm eyeing it up right now, and I'm trying to do some special things. It is our 25th anniversary of doing our first ever road trip, so I'm excited about that. Throw me a note, nasty@WNST.net. A reminder, our morning newspaper comes to you each and every morning at 7 a.m. It is all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. 2018, the Lunk Alarm, they're judgment-free, and they're there to get you in shape. Stop in and see them at Planet Fitness. There's one right around the corner from you. And if you're getting our morning newspaper, you're going to get Purple Rain 2, a chapter a day, every day, into your email inbox. It's out online. It's free. Celebrating the 5th anniversary. Yes, it's been 5 years since Jacoby Jones, 5 years since Joe Flacco and the parade and all that good stuff, and back shoulder to Anquan Bolden and the lights going out in the march and on and on and on and on. Purple Rain 2 now up at WNST.net. I hope you give that a read, a share, a like, a kind word, and a nice memory. And share some pictures and videos as well. Last but never least, breaking news when the Orioles deal Manny Machado to the Arizona Diamondbacks. You'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.